Welcome to the Exit Rich podcast, where the leading authority on buying, selling, fixing, and growing companies, Michelle Seiler Tucker, is dedicated to helping you find the path to retire rich and move on to your next adventure by exiting your business for the desired dream price you deserve. Get ready to exit rich with your host, Michelle Seiler Tucker.
And welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. I'm so excited to have my very special, well, I say special friend, even though I just met you, Marcia, at a mastermind, but you and I have lots of special friends in common. So welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. Marcia, welcome to the show. All of my listeners and my followers, you're in for a huge, huge treat today because we have the one, the only Marcia. I like to say Marcia. But we have the one, the only Marcia Martin. And you know what? She was called Marcia pretty much her entire life. And she never saw the Brady Bunch, so she never knew what people were referring to. But Marcia is a CEO, and she's a successful CEO, entrepreneur, global speaker, corporate executive, coach, trainer, transformational thought leader, change maker extraordinaire. Marcia Martin's reputation is legendary. But wait, there's more. Let me tell you, she had a 3-page bio. I cut it down. So Marcia has personally trained, are you ready for this? Over 350,000 people globally in communication and leadership skills. Boy, our White House, our politics could sure use her in leadership skills, and has coached, trained thousands of corporate teams to perform at championship level. I tell you, every company that I get ready for sale could use Marcia for sure. Marcia's leadership programs and workshops teach participants to access and harness their personal power, to harness and excel at the art of influential communication. And you know what? That's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into communication, because if we could just fix communication in the world, we have no problems. And understand the secrets of successful relationships. I'm sure a lot of my listeners would like to have better relationships. And then Marcia's clients include, are you ready for this? Hard Rock Hotels. I think everybody's stayed at a Hard Rock Hotel at some point in their life. Warner Brothers, Dannon, McCain Foods, Evian Water, Intercontinental Hotels, the Hyatt Hotels, the Lowe's Hotel, American Cancer Society, Chase Bank, and of course, many more. She just told me that she managed Tony Robbins for 2 years. And I said, why didn't you include that in your bio? Because that's impressive to me. She said, oh, I forgot. So she, as an impassioned entrepreneur, she has personally built several global businesses from inception to millions. We would be here all day if I continue to read her bio. So welcome to the show, Marcia. I'm going to let her tell you more about who is Marcia and how did she get started and what was Marcia like as a little girl. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's get
Wow, Michelle, that's like so much. I thought the show was only an hour long. Well, I've been in this work since I was a teenager, really. I've been working with leaders my whole life. I graduated in communication and business development. And I went to the University of Washington and University of San Francisco, where I got my degree, my Bachelor of Science degree in organizational development. And I started in the early 70s with 5 other people, an organization called EST, which became Landmark Forum, and was senior vice president for 10 years. And we took that particular personal education and transformational education company to a place where we had millions of graduates. And we started with one workshop with 20 people. So
wow.
I've seen an organization in terms of how it grows and what you need to do to take it to a sustainable.
And that was decades ago.
Yes,
16. Wow.
Yeah. And since then, I've been well known from that time because I touched many hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And many leaders came to me to ask me to do the same thing for their company. Tony Robbins was one of those people. And I've worked with several thought leaders and organizations, both corporations and entrepreneurial, to teach them how to be an organization that can be champions, not just mediocre, not just improvement, but really work through to breakthrough performance. And I work with their people in terms of their communication, their leadership skills, how they speak. One of my sweet spots is I take people who are afraid to speak in front of groups and make charismatic public speakers out of them.
Wow,
so
that's
a little
exciting.
about me.
So how does a 16-year-old get started? Because I'm sure my listeners have children and they're like, I have a 16-year-old, she does nothing, or he does nothing. Tell us about what motivated you. What were you like as a little girl? How did you get into this at 16?
Well, my parents were pretty much on the move. My father was kind of a lost soul. So we moved from town to town, from state to state. So when I was a young girl, I had to learn really fast how to get into the particular grade I was in, meet people, be effective, make friends. It had to happen very quick because I knew we would be out of there in just a short time. And I went to probably 3 or 4 schools a year until I was a sophomore in high school. So part of my ability from when I was a small girl was that I learned to make impact quickly. I learned to make connection. I learned what worked. And I was always the most popular. And I think
of course you were. Why wouldn't you be? You're Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
And I was really committed. And because my home life was really very scary, and my father was an alcoholic, and I had to take care of the kids, and it wasn't the best situation.
You had to take care of your siblings.
Yes.
Which was how many?
Well, my mother married 3 times, and the first time I had 4 brothers and sisters, and then each of the other marriages the man had 3. So there was always.
Well, that is the Brady Bunch, Marcia.
There you go.
That is the Brady Bunch, but it was only you, right? It was you, and then you had stepbrothers and sisters.
Well, no, I had 5. There were 5 of us.
Oh, 5 of y'all, and then the stepfather would come in and have 3. So that is the Brady Bunch. I can't believe you never watched the Brady Bunch.
I think what happened was I really excelled in school. And I was really committed to my extracurricular activities because home was really a scary place to be. And so I got very competitive, and I knew with my parents' economical situation, I was going to have to earn a scholarship. So I knew I had to excel in my schooling. So I've always been that kind of a person from the time that I've been small. And since I was the oldest, I was the leader of the bunch. Of us. Yeah,
you are the leader of the bunch, Marsha.
And so I learned how to give instructions and have people follow me, and it just became one of those things. And by the time that I was in my early 20s, I had an aunt who was a clairvoyant healer. And she was very amazing, especially at that time, because a lot of people didn't know about metaphysics and science of mind and how the universe works and energy and chakras and meditation and things like that. So that was my foundation. I learned to meditate by the time that I was in my early teens, and I learned how to heal and how to keep my body in good shape and how to think in a great way. And I learned all about philosophy because I interned with her, and she had me study all the great philosophers, the world religions. She wanted me to know how people think and what people believe in and how to connect with all kinds of human beings. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I was already pretty prepared to do what I did next. And when I met Werner Erhard, who was the founder of EST, which became Landmark Forum, he realized my skill set in connecting with people and enrolling people and selling and persuasive skills. And so he took me on as the senior vice president. There were only 5 of us at the time and 20 people in our first workshop. And by the time that I left 10 years later, I had 5,000 people working for me in my communication registration division, and there were millions of graduates worldwide.
Wow. And what was the specific workshop about? Was that about leadership, communication?
It's about how you think. The Landmark Forum is a study in communication and communication arts and technology of the mind, and how you can cause action and how you can connect with other people and how you can create championship results. So that was my fundamental teaching from the time that I was a young woman. And then, of course, I had so much skill by the time I practiced it for so long that I could teach others how to do the same thing. And so a lot of corporate executives and people came to my workshops or asked me to come into their companies and consult them and train their teams on how do you connect and be aligned? How do you collaborate? You know, a lot of times when you go into a corporation, there are a lot of silos and everybody's pointing at everybody else saying, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my job. They did it. He did it. She did it. So a lot of blame and a lot of non-responsibility and a lot of upset. And so the skills that I had were that I did understand how one experiences and how one can be in present time and how one can connect and how one can communicate and how one can inspire and how one can affect others and impact and be influential. So that's been my work my whole life.
Wonderful. Well, that hasn't been your only work your entire life, because you've also are an entrepreneur and you've founded many different businesses. Again, we didn't have time to get into your entire bio, but why don't we talk about that really quickly before we jump into communication? I know that you founded a global, I believe, jewelry company, right? And so in Singapore and really all over the world. Why don't you talk about that real quick? And, you know, are you founder of any businesses right now that you have going on?
So Suru Inc. was a fashion jewelry company that was co-founded by Laurel Birch and myself and one other person. And we marketed to wholesale jewelry companies, boutiques, museums, Bloomingdale's, department stores, the Smithsonian. We had 3,500 wholesale accounts, and we had offices in Beijing and in Hong Kong and in New York and Los Angeles.
Exciting.
San Francisco. But the work itself, I mean, it was a product that was different for me, but the work itself was really the same, because I think all companies need the skills that I bring to an organization, no matter what their product. But that was one of my favorite products for sure. And it was really fun.
And do you still do consulting? Do you still own companies?
Yeah, I still do consulting. That's my work now. I'm working with Hard Rock International and training their senior executives in their hotels worldwide. I work with companies that are digital marketing companies in Canada. And then I have my own digital products, which I'm creating right now so that others can get this information and not have to have me come live, but can get it on online courses. And
that's wonderful.
What we're together now.
Yeah. And I tell you, some of these digital social media companies, not to name any like Facebook or anything, but some of these companies, they really need somebody like you, you know, because if you have an issue, if you have a concern, if you have a complaint, there's nobody to go to. So anyway, hopefully they're listening today. So before we jump in, now I know you focus on sales, you focus on public speaking, and you focus on communication. You and I decided to talk about communication today because I feel like communication comes first. You know, if you're not an effective communicator, you're not going to be an effective leader. If you're not an effective communicator, you're not going to be great at sales. If you're not an effective communicator, you're going to have difficult children and a difficult spouse.
Yes.
So I think you and I decided let's really dive into communication, because it's what really makes the world go around. I mean, I feel like if we have better communication in politics and better communication around the world with our leaders, that there would be a lot less issues, a lot less wars, a lot less conflict. And certainly in business, there's so much conflict due to lack of communication. And certainly at the personal level is the same. And yesterday when you and I talked a little bit, you said, well, there's rules to communication. I'm like, of course there is. There's rules to everything. We just don't know the rules. And a lot of times we're trying to play these games and we don't understand the rules. And so that's why so many people fail at communication or not as successful as they could be. So let's really jump into that. And then let's talk about how we can get you to be president of the United States.
You're so cute. Well, first of all, it's more than rules. It's what I call laws. And there are
laws. Okay.
Yeah, there are ways things work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, most people, if you listen to them speak, they'll say something like, oh, it shouldn't be that way, or it should be like this, or why isn't it that way? And we spend a lot of our time really wasted talking about things that aren't even there, rather than really looking at and learning and being cognizant and aware of how it really does work. Not the way it should work or it shouldn't, but how does it? And we're happy to understand that in certain things. Like I was talking to you about gravity. Gravity is interesting because we all know the law of gravity. And it's because we learned that law when we were very young.
Because we fell down all the time.
Exactly.
Now, why is it when we get older, we fall down too?
Well, I think that we fall down, but at least we know that we don't want to fall 20 stories. We only put ourselves in situations where we can fall the amount.
But you notice as babies, you fall all the time. And then when people start getting in their 80s, 70s and 80s, they start falling all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the law of gravity.
Well, here's the thing. We organize ourselves around gravity.
Yep.
We don't fight with gravity. We don't say screw gravity and then decide to go out the 10th floor window because it's just too much trouble to go down in the elevator. We don't do that.
That's such a great analogy.
But when it comes to communication, there are
we don't even take the stairs. We'd rather take the elevator.
Yeah, or the stairs. I mean, we don't say screw gravity.
Correct.
We organize our life around the law that we know will operate and win. We don't fight with it. But when it comes to other kinds of laws that are just as real, but not so apparent in terms of in our face, then we start thinking, well, we don't really need to do that or that. And communication is one of those things because there's laws in communication. For example, communication doesn't take place unless you're present. And unless the person you're communicating with is present. But think of all the situations that you are talking, saying words, giving instructions, and the other person isn't listening, isn't present, or you're not present.
But they're nodding, they're saying yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Or you've got your mind on something, or, mothers are like cooking while their kid is saying, mom, 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 or, later, I'll get to you later. Or you're in a meeting in a company. How many people are on their phones texting when somebody's speaking in the meeting about an issue for the company? We're not present.
Yeah, even at conferences, we're not present. And even, in my office, my employees will just walk through the door and start talking. Well, I'm in the middle of an email. I'm in the middle of a business text message, and I'm like, no, you have to get my attention first.
That's correct.
Before you just start talking. Let me finish my task at hand. Then you'll have my undivided attention.
That's right. And you're saying both the speaker and the listener have to be present. It's not just one or the other.
Correct.
And so part of communication is not just getting ourselves here in the now, present, but how do we get the person that we want to communicate with here? And if you understand that it's a law, that no communication really happens. You can have talking, you can have words, you can have, facial expressions, but communication is where I really get and recreate, duplicate the experience that you're sending to me, and I connect with it and I get it. And I'm able to respond to that. Well, that can't happen unless you're present and the other person is present. But how many people take the time to get somebody present? When they notice that they have less time, for example, in the sales, say you have a sales presentation, it's 40 minutes or it's 30 minutes, and you go in and the person says to you, hey, everything changed and I only have 15 minutes. I'll tell you what the person will do. They'll start talking faster because they need to get that presentation into 15 minutes now, when what they really need to do is get the person present. Because if the person is saying to you, I don't have time, I've only got 15 minutes, they're already distracted. They're already not there. So it's going to take, it would be better if you just got them present to the point where you could say, I really want to change this meeting. And get them involved with what you have that you're going to present later. That would be more effective than if you try to squeeze your presentation into the 15 minutes that you have without either of you being present. So that's a law. You have to.
It is a law, and I tell you, and it's difficult, especially in a company where you got a lot of moving parts, a lot of people, interruptions. My husband calls it developed traffic, and he wants his developed traffic scheduled. He doesn't want you walking in with an interruption because he always says lack of planning on your behalf doesn't create an emergency on his.
I like him already.
And I feel the same way. So, and I know my clients complain about this all the time. I'm like, Michelle, I tell them over and over and over again what to do, and they're not doing it. They keep doing the same bad habit, or they're not listening. So how do you go back and really correct that and say, okay, especially in a business environment, because things are moving at light speed, how do you do that? Because it's one thing to get them present. What do? Knock them over the head with a baseball bat? What do we do?
Well, no, everybody learns in the same way. You learn two ways, actually. You have a mind and you learn through understanding things. That's how your mind learns. You take in information. Somebody can tell you something and you understand it. You read a book and you understand it. So that's one way of getting a learning. Another way of getting a learning, which also has to happen, is through your body. And your body learns differently than your mind. Your body learns through practice. So for example, if you want to play the piano, yes, you probably should understand a few things about music and notes, and your understanding is what you're teaching your mind. But you actually have to sit at the piano and play it and practice it, because how the body learns is through practice. You can't just sit down and start playing Chopin. You have to start with chopsticks, and you have to make mistakes, and you have to do it over and over and over. So to learn anything, including listening, you have to actually practice. And most of us haven't learned those skills. We learn math. Well, that's how do we learn math? We learn first by understanding it, and then by doing math problems.
Right. But
we don't learn to listen. Nobody gave us exercises in listening when we were in school. They just said, shut up. That's what listening.
Or they say you have ADD, HDD, go get on medication.
Yeah. Or because that's not what listening is. Listening isn't I hear what you say. Listening is I duplicate your experience. Now, there's more to it than just that I duplicate, because I have to have space. Now, here we come into the second law. So first law is you have to be present. Second law, there has to be space in which things can exist, which includes communication. If you want someone to get your communication, there has to be space within themselves for them to create the space to hear what you sent. So you have to learn how to create space in somebody else, and that means listening. It's kind of like if you had two glasses of water and they're both filled up to the top. And then you said to someone, oh, I want to put this glass of water inside this one. And you start to fill it up, and somebody says, stop, it's full, it won't fit. And you know enough about glasses of water to know, well, if they want to put that water in the other glass, they better empty it out first to create the space so you can put something in. And that's how communication works. You have within you, and every human being does, all sorts of things that fill up your space. Regrets, resentments, worries, fear, to-do lists, things that you wish you hadn't done, things that you want to do, considerations about things, emotions, all of those things are rolling around within you. And you know what it feels like to be filled up, because
I always say you have to close a cycle. It's kind of like your computer. If your computer has so many programs, apps, documents open, it's going to start running slow. It's going to run sluggish, and pretty soon it's just going to shut down and then you got to reboot. And so the same thing holds true with the person, is that if you got so many cycles open, that's why I talk about closing the cycles. Close one cycle at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So you got to close those cycles. If you don't close those cycles, it's kind of like when Gary Keller wrote the book, The One Thing, focus on that one thing, get that one thing done, and then move on. And so, because otherwise people run sluggish. But you're right. I mean, employees, if they're going to college and getting their master's, if they've, get any type of personal issues, if, maybe they don't understand the task or afraid to say so, just all kinds of things. But it's really difficult for business owners to try to grasp and employees too, to try to, okay, are you hearing me? Do you get the task? Are you clear on the task? Are we going to do the task correctly? I think that's the hardest thing when it comes to leaders or owners, entrepreneurs, and employees. And again, in the home with your children.
Yeah. Well, that they don't hear you and they don't do it right most of the time.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we try to fill them up, because then we say, oh, you should have done that. We give them more stuff and we fill them up, rather than realizing in order to create space, it's like you said with completing a cycle. Completing cycles create space, because you complete a cycle, that cycle disappears. Now you have space. If you have it only half done, it's still hanging out in there. So another way to create space for others is to listen in such a way that you're really generously listening, and you're listening and duplicating. You're not sitting there thinking about what you're going to say next while they're talking.
Which is what a lot of people do.
Exactly. And if you were to listen generously and duplicate someone, recreate their experience, be with what they're saying instead of with what you want to say back, you have to be in present time to do that. You have to be with them, connected to do that. You can't be off in your own head thinking about what you're going to do. And you have to have enough space within you that you can receive what they're saying. Because the same law goes for you. Well, you can't put something into their space if they don't have it. You can't take something out of their space if you don't have space to put it into. So you have to learn two really good skill sets: how to create space for others and how to create space for yourself. For yourself, you have a very good technique, complete cycles. That will help. There's another thing that helps, which is meditation or contemplation or reflection or being still. But most people don't want to be still. They're always doing something.
Especially entrepreneurs,
Yeah, busy, thinking, doing, never stopping and clearing out some of all of that stuff. And meditation can do that. And it can get you to a place where you have more space to receive. If you have more space to receive, then you can start practicing listening in such a way that you're creating space for someone else. Now, here's the problem. Most of us listen to see if they're right or wrong, or if we agree or disagree. We don't listen in order to duplicate what's so, or to recreate what they're sending. We take what they're sending and say, it's right, it's wrong. I agree with it, I don't agree with it. And then we want to put back our point of view immediately to tell them why they're wrong, which fills up the space again. It's kind of like you're pouring the water out and you're receiving it, and all of a sudden you say, but no, that's wrong. And you put it back in. So one has to get to a place where they're able to be still and quiet enough to listen past where it's comfortable. Because I got to tell you, there's only mostly interruptions. That's what's happening. It's like, I'll say something and then you'll interrupt me. You, not you, Michelle, but you, the human beings out there. And that's how we communicate back and forth, just pushing stuff back and forth. We never really get it. Yeah. We never sit with it. We never allow it to be the way it is. We think it should be different. Oh, you shouldn't be angry. Oh, you shouldn't be sad. Oh, stop. It's not like, oh, I get you're angry. And just get it. Not put something back about how to fix it or why it shouldn't be or anything else, just to get it until the person actually goes, oh, and they give it to you and they don't have it anymore. And that does the same thing that what you're talking about, closing a cycle does, completing a cycle, creates some space.
So how do you do that? and because it sounds easy, right? Sounds easy. But when you're in a busy environment, I'm sure you got some great answers here, because you are working with Hard Rock, which is an extremely busy environment, and pretty much every company you've represented is a pretty busy, busy. And Tony Robbins is busy and all over the place. So how do you do that? Because most entrepreneurs are so focused on putting out fires, dealing with the task at hand, trying to manage employees, trying to lead employees, trying to get employees to follow through on instructions, follow through on tasks, listen and do it. How do you do that? How does an entrepreneur do that when they have so many balls in the air they're juggling? And employees probably have balls in the air they're juggling, or they're worried about home, or they're worried about the car, or they're worried about school, or they're worried about this or that. How do you do it so quick?
Well, it doesn't happen quickly.
Exactly. That's the problem. I'm trying to get to people to slow
down. It's just what's so. It's just what's so. It just because it is the way it is doesn't make it a problem. You see, entrepreneurs, if they get stuck in thinking I have to do everything fast, and they don't realize that the way things work is you have to develop someone to be able to have a capacity or a skill set. Once they're developed, then you're leveraged.
Yeah.
But if you don't develop them and you just keep throwing things at them, then what you have is burnout.
And do you have programs for employees to learn how to create space? Because it goes both ways.
I do.
Not just the entrepreneur.
Well, when I go into an organization, I ask all the managers to come together for 3 days, and we do what I call the ABCs. Because people haven't had the ABCs of how their mind works, how their emotions work, how their body works, how their communication works, how action happens, how something is created, how you produce a result. All of those things are pretty important to know. And it's just like reading. You didn't start reading by going and getting a book by Ernest Hemingway. You started by learning the alphabet. ABCs. And then pretty soon you had this really exciting time when you said, oh my God, CAT spells cat. It's a word. And then pretty soon you could make sentences and paragraphs, and pretty soon you could read an Ernest Hemingway book. So it started with the ABCs. And that's what I bring into organizations, because everybody thinks they're so expert, skilled. They're working, pushing things through and making people do things and quick. And that's jumping out of the 10th floor. I'm telling you, there is gravity.
Yeah. So what's a time frame to try to, like I always say, it takes what, 30 days, 60 days to start a new habit. What's the time frame to learn this method so people can communicate more effectively?
I start with a 3-day retreat. And then I think you need to bring someone or have some kind of continual program. I have continued programs that come in at the minimum every quarter, and that you also have individual coaching as well. And then it takes a period of about 2 years to really get to a place where a person is able to cause something intentionally, able to develop somebody else, able to put assignments, give assignments to somebody and have the person actually know what you mean when you say what you're saying. Because they just operate in a different way. They see differently, they listen differently, the world shows up for them differently, they have a different mindset. And then things go really, really fast.
And then they have a lot of voices in their head. We haven't even talked about that.
In the back of your head, right?
Yeah. All right. So is that your biggest focus on some of these large corporations is communication? I know you do sales, communication, public speaking. I would think it's communication because that seems to be the biggest struggle in most corporations.
Well, if you have a bowl, the bowl is communication. And if you have the fruit in the bowl, the fruit is public speaking, selling, influencing, leading. So the whole bigger topic.
You work on communication with clients too, because that's another big, it can be another big issue in businesses, just the breakdown of communication between obviously, the entrepreneur, the clients, the salespeople, the clients, then even the salespeople and the deliverables team in a company. There's communications breakdown through all of that, all of those pieces. I assume you work on the client piece as well.
Well, I work with the person who has the client.
Yeah.
But I don't go in and train the
work with the
client.
clients, right?
If the client wants to hire me, then I work on that person.
I'll give you some clients. I'll give you some of my clients. All right. So we talked about the first two steps. We talked about you have to be present, right? You have to be present. Number one. Number two, you have to create. Oh, I got it. I got it. I've been listening. I've been listening. I've created some space for this podcast today. So you have to create space. And then what's the third thing?
Well, first of all, you have to understand it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4 linearly. Oh. It's not a linear process. It's all of these things. It's kind of like a pizza pie.
I know when I asked you how many laws, you're like, Michelle, there's so many laws. I'm like, okay, well, let's cover the top 3.
Well, there are so many ways that things work that you have to take into consideration. So another thing that's happening at the same time is you have emotions. People get upset. Another thing that happens at the same time is people don't know that you got what they said. So you have to learn to acknowledge in a way that works so that people have an indication that you got what they said.
Right.
Another thing that is going on at the same time is people have different gradients. In other words, a degree of slope is the gradient. So if you're skiing, I'm from Aspen, so I
go skiing in Aspen every year, once a year.
Well, when you first started skiing, you went to the bunny hill.
Yeah, I fell down a lot. I crashed into the shed.
Yeah, and you didn't go directly up to the Black Diamond runs.
No.
Because the gradient you were at was a lesser slope, or degree of slope, than the people who had been skiing for a while. And that's the same with people with their emotions, with their ability to confront things, with their ability to see things, with their ability to listen to something. Like take feedback. You have to teach your executives how to receive and give feedback. And not just positive feedback, but negative feedback, because people aren't doing the job correctly. Well, people have different gradients on how they can receive feedback because they take it personally. Yes. So you have to teach them how to not take it personally. So you have to teach them there's all of this stuff going on. And that's why I say to people, give me 3 days first. And I can put it all together so that when you come out of those 3 days, you're a different person. You see differently, you listen differently, you respond differently, you choose differently, you have different opportunities, different things show up for you, you attract things differently, you take advantage of things differently. And it's really just the ABC. Somebody should have taught this shit to them a long time ago, because it's just how to spell, do you see? But you can't read without knowing the ABCs, and you can't communicate if you don't know the basics of how your mind works, how your emotions work, what upsets you and how do you handle that and why? How do you speak in a way that somebody will listen? How do you inspire? How do you influence? So it's a lot of stuff, Michelle. This is
you can stay with the word shit. That's okay. The only child I know that listens to this is my daughter, who's 11, going on 16.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's not.
She'll listen to my podcast, and then she'll show it to all of her friends. Yeah. All right. So, okay. Again, not in any order. You got to be present. You got to create space. You got to have emotions in check.
Well, here's the deal. Here's how people experience. They act as if how they experience is something outside of themselves, makes them do something, feel something, or act like something. So if you listen to people's language, they'll say, so-and-so made me angry. It made me sad. Okay, so that's not what happens. See, events are happening outside of you. Yes. And you as a human being have the capacity to be centered or not. Centered is you're open, present, and connected. When you're open, present, and connected, you don't get knocked off. When you get knocked off center, you're upset, you're angry, you're sad, etc. You can't make a choice of how to respond if you're off center. So you have to learn, get centered before you act. So let's say you get a phone call and it's somebody and they're upsetting and it doesn't go the way you want it. Now you find yourself all crazy and triggered, right? And then the first thing you do is make another phone call. So you're already crazy and then you're crazy on the next phone call. So you're reactive. So a basic mantra is, if you get knocked off center, and things will knock you off, get centered before you take any action. Get centered before you speak. Get centered before you press send. Get centered before you put the mail in the mailbox. Get centered before you yell at your kids. Get centered first. Then what happens in that space where you're centered, there's a small space where you have the ability to choose. How am I going to respond? Because the event doesn't make you respond. You always respond as a choice. That's what human beings do. But most human beings don't know that about themselves. They think they're the victim of the universe and circumstances. And if somebody's yelling at them, then that makes them sad. And they start acting out all of this behavior that doesn't really provide any support for themselves. So a way first is for you to understand why that's happening. And why that happens is, it's not that an event makes you anything. It's that an event reminds you of something that happened in the past. And the reason that you keep that reminder around is because your mind categorizes events and keeps the formula of what you did at that time to survive held close. It's like default. It's like your little program, you're a computer and you go on automatic default. So what happens is, an event happens, it triggers an old event. All old events.
Subconsciously, you don't even know it's happening.
That's right. All old events happen between the time you're born and 10. You don't need to have any other events to remind you of what to do. And what's even worse is, from the time that you're born until around 8 or 9 or 10, you're in theta brainwave, which is the same brainwave that you go into when you're hypnotized. So not only did you have all these events happen that get triggered, they happened at such a deep level that you don't even notice why you're saying what you're saying. You just know you're attacking all of a sudden, or you're being angry, when it's just an automatic formula that goes into play, default, for you to react when that happens. So
if we screwed up our kids, I always say, can't unring the bell, but you can go back and try to fix the damage.
Well, it's I wouldn't look at it as damage. I would look at it that there's a special thing about human beings. See, there's a lot of species out there, and lots of species communicate, but not all species have language. Human beings have language. That means you swim in a pool of assumptions and interpretations. So it's not so much a function, results aren't so much a function of what you say. It's a function of what's heard. And everybody has their own filters that you have to get through, their own way of listening and interpreting and assuming what it is that you're saying and what it means to them. And so it's hard to communicate. And that's why I really think
that's why communication is the number one issue in the world. Right?
Well, I think it's the ABCs.
And, I always tell my clients, everybody, never make decisions based on emotions. Like you said, you have to get centered. That's why if you want to write a nasty email, write out the nasty email. Don't push send. Want to write out. But so many of us are reactive. We need to go from reactive to responsive, to responding.
Well, and that's what you say. A responsive is when you're choosing. Reaction when you're choosing. When you're reacting. And so if something triggers you, you're off center, you can't choose. You will react automatically the way you did before if it succeeded in making you survive. And here you are. So whatever you did, your mind thinks that's what we need to do because we survived. So if what you did was attack or get upset or feel lonely or sad or not held right or abandoned or fearful or ferocious, whatever your thing was when that happened, if you think that's happening again, you're going to pull it up, put it on default and act it out.
Wow.
Unless
Now that was, look,
enter.
that was very enlightening right there.
Good.
Yeah, say that one more time, because I think
Yes.
that's like a light bulb going off. It's like a light bulb going off moment.
I can
That
see.
if you were yelling, let's say you were raised in an abusive family and you yell because you said, I'm not putting up with this shit, then that's going to be your reactor. If
Exactly.
you were in an alcoholic family, abusive family, whatever it was, and you retracted and got emotional, but kind of kept to yourself and kept it all in, that's how you're going to react when you're triggered, right?
Yes.
I think that's just a huge light bulb moment there for a lot of people. And that's what I always say with my partners. When I decide to partner with business owners, I always, like, I want to do a baggage check. I want to do a baggage check. I want to check their baggage and see, how many emotional rocks do we have in that suitcase, because I always say you'll never grow the business beyond what you can grow the owner.
That's very good. That's very wise. I like that. And yes, it's accurate what you're saying. And I have found it takes about 3 days of these little moments where people go, oh, to turn them into a different mindset, where they see differently, hear differently.
But it's not a 3 days and done. It's a 3 days and continue on practicing.
And it's a lifelong journey, as it always has been. But
that's for anything you do, whether it's exercise, whether it's eating, healthy. It's whatever you do, Yeah. It's a lifestyle.
It is. And I find it very interesting. And
I do too. I'm fascinated by this conversation.
Yeah.
I told you we would have you on multiple times, because next time we're going to talk about sales.
Oh, I love selling.
Yes, me too. So we're going to have you back on.
Okay.
So any last words or golden nuggets or words of wisdom? I know you have lots, and that's kind of a silly question because I know you have lots, but any, last minute thoughts, maybe some tips, quick tip, if there are any quick. See, I'm a quick person, but any tips, any advice that you can give so our listeners can start that path, start that road to communicating better with their families, their employees or clients, or employees can start communicating better with their employers. It goes both ways. Any last minute golden nuggets, words of wisdom, tips around that?
I would say 3 things. First of all, center first before you act.
Yeah.
So have something that you do to get you on center, whether it's take a breath or walk around the block, or just say to the person, hey, I'm off center. I need a little time. Just take a break and get yourself back to being present, open, and connected before you continue the conversation or the phone.
That's very funny. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I had a call 2 weeks ago. It was buyer, seller's attorney. And the buyer said to the attorney, you need to center yourself. So mute yourself right now. Mute yourself. Now, of course, that, really aggravated the attorney. It made it so much worse. But yeah, I love that. Go ahead.
And the second thing I would say is learn to listen generously. And you can teach yourself to do this by playing a trick on your mind. What you do is you pretend whoever you're listening to is brilliant and whatever they're saying is possible. So you just keep saying that to yourself. This person's brilliant. This person is saying something that's possible.
That's what I've been doing with you this whole time. And guess what? You are brilliant. So there we go.
Because most of us listen as if that person is a jerk or they're wrong or whatever else.
They're dumb. They don't know anything.
So you have to get into because what you do with generous listening is you're creating a space for that person to empty.
Right.
And they will only be able to empty as big as the space is. So that's the second thing, is listen generously. And then the third thing is listen longer than you think you should. Like, don't talk Just say, okay, I got it. Fine, good, thank you. I hear you. I see. Keep saying things that keeps them talking, and have them talk longer than you would think that they should before you put in your stuff.
Before you try to fix it.
Yes.
Before you're like, yeah, but you did this to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get the butts out of it for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes it's wise to just listen one day and not respond till the next day. Like that's
I do that a lot. So I'm like, I'm not going to make a decision right now. I'm going to really think about this. I'll get back to you. Yeah, absolutely. So how long should one listen?
Well, you can,
I'm all about the time.
I always say the person, if you don't say anything, they'll just keep talking, because people are very uncomfortable in silence. So if you just say, okay, good, fine, I got it. Thank you. And they keep getting that you're listening, they'll keep talking. If they stop, you can find out if they've talked long enough by saying, what else? And if they keep talking, you haven't listened long enough, but let them empty out.
And I think, for us busy entrepreneurs, you almost have to schedule time for that, because if you try to have that conversation in the middle of the day, and now you're about to get ready for a podcast or get ready for a book sign or get ready, to talk to a client or go on a Zoom meeting or speak, you're not going to be listening intently, and you're going to be rushing the conversation. So I always say, schedule chaos. So schedule that.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good idea. And another thing to say is that in addition to that, notice that it's a dance. Yeah. And the dance is create space, then put something in. So if you create some space by listening, listen as long as you can and a little past what you think, not forever, but just listen a little longer than you normally do before you jump in. And you've got some space there for that person. So then you can put something in. But then notice, their space is filled up again, and listen again. And kind of do that dance. But just do the listening part a little longer than you normally would.
Yeah, because people want to be heard. A lot of times, if you just hear them out, because again, it goes back to trigger in their childhood. I have one client that I work with, and he goes off on a rampage, yells and throws things at all of his employees. I mean, he literally goes on a rampage. And I started realizing that the reason for that, after I started doing some probing, is that severely neglected, at home, really wasn't listened to, really wasn't respected, and everybody left him.
Yeah.
And so what I realized is he was testing people. How far are they going to, how loyal are they going to be? How much can I throw at them to make sure that they're going to stay and they're going to be loyal to me?
Yeah, very good.
Because that was his, that's his trigger when he feels like somebody's about to leave because everybody else left. And so he was just constantly badgering to say, are you going to be loyal to me? Are you going to stick around? Are you going to put whatever I give you? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, and that's why I say when I partner with business owners, I'm very careful, cautious, because you're not just partnering with them, you're partnering with all their baggage and their family, etc. And so I think it is so important to do that and, listen, which is hard for people to do, but people just want to be heard. And where I was going with this, because I'm like, where was I going? Where I was going with this is that once they're heard and they feel like they're listened to, because that could be a trigger. Maybe nobody listened to them in their childhood. Then they feel, oh, I'm good.
Yes.
I'm good. My needs are being met. I'm not really angry anymore. Or that was stupid what I was upset about. I just wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, just listen a little longer than normal, a little longer than you normally would, because you'll be surprised what comes out.
Yeah. And I think, I know entrepreneurs are listening to this going, I don't have time to eat lunch. I don't have time to do this and this and this and this and this and that. That's why it's important to schedule that time if you feel like you need to bring somebody in to listen and try to work out some issues that you feel that are arising or already have occurred. And or if you're not good at it, you hire somebody that is. Like you get a really good human resource person, a really good leader, a good COO in there that has that capability and understands the laws.
Also, I say to entrepreneurs that say that they don't have time is, okay, maybe they don't now, but the only way they're going to create more time is to develop people to be stronger. And the only way they're going to develop people to be stronger is to actually develop them. And so the leverage. And
it might not be the entrepreneurs that develops them. It might be bringing you in to help develop them. It might be, them choosing, like I said, a CEO, a general manager, a leader, human resource individual. And then it's kind of like you train the trainer. But I still think the owner needs to learn those skills, because what happens if you lose that person?
Yes. So there's so much to talk about. One of the things we might talk about in the future is how to really have an effective meeting, because most meetings that people have are full of information, and information doesn't cause action or get things done or solve problems. So one needs to know what they're doing in the meeting, and most people don't. So that's another topic you and I could talk about.
Who would like or love for Marcia to come back on, maybe on a monthly basis?
Oh,
comment. I know you. Let's create space for other people to respond. All right. So Marcia, everybody go comment. Who would like Marcia to come back on a regular basis? Because I think there's so much wisdom you have. So many golden nuggets you're dropping. And just, again, you said it's the bowl. And the bowl is communication. Everything stems from communication. So Marcia, we're coming to the end here. Any last words of wisdom? And then how can our audience find you, reach out to you, join some of your workshops?
Excellent. Go to marshamartinclub.com, and it's Marcia spelled Marcia, and email me at marsha@marshamartin.com if you're interested in finding out about my programs, bringing me into your organization, or having coaching.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Marcia, for being on. Marcia. You are the true Brady Bunch, I think. But anyway, thanks to our listeners. Thanks to our audience. If you love this episode as much as I did, then please share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your colleagues, share it with your employees, your mentors, share it with anyone inside your sphere of influence, and make sure you subscribe to Exit Rich. And we can't wait to have Marcia back on again.
Thank you so much, Michelle. God bless.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Exit Rich podcast. Don't forget to check out Michelle Seiler Tucker's Build to Sell Blueprint books and Exit Rich, along with more blogs, videos, and resources at exitrichpodcast.com. Be sure to connect with Michelle on Facebook or LinkedIn, and stay tuned for her next episode by subscribing in your favorite podcast player.